Her voice drops to an icy whisper. She instructs him to absorb this humiliation, to feel it completely, but forbids him from succumbing to despair. She reminds him that he is, after all, her son, a true Lionheart. Yes, Cyan manages to choke out, his voice barely audible. He appears completely shattered. And Celia presses on with her cold-blooded political calculus, explaining that because he is now at a distinct disadvantage, he must strive with even greater desperation than before. Then, she delivers the most bitter pill to swallow. And you will become friends with Eugene, she commands, her hand a heavy weight on his shoulder. Cyan can only stare at her in bewilderment. Because you are brothers now. Precisely, she confirms. Her plan is for him to forge a genuine brotherly bond, thereby transforming his most formidable rival into his strongest ally. Yes, mother, Cyan concedes, the fight completely gone from him. He averts his gaze, murmuring the word friendly as if it's a concept from another world. He pictures himself attempting to approach Eugene, who always seems so thoroughly unimpressed by his very existence. He is utterly and completely lost. How am I even supposed to become friends with him? As if on cue, another sibling materializes. It's CL, Cyan's twin sister, casually strolling up to Eugene while munching on a slice of cake. So, I hear we're family now, she declares, her mouth still half full. Yeah, Eugene grunts, already attempting to make his escape. But CL dogs his steps, pestering him to just call her Nuna, his older sister. Eugene freezes in his tracks, a look of pure disgust on his face, as if, you're barely a few months older than me. CL just pouts, whining that she's already considered a younger sister simply because she was born a mere 5 seconds after her twin brother. That's completely different, Eugene retorts. But CL is relentless. Just say it one time, it's not that. She gets right up in his personal space, nagging him without mercy. But for Eugene, who is internally a man in his 30s, the very thought of calling this 13-year-old pipsqueak older sister is utterly repulsive. He sticks his tongue out in a gesture of absolute disgust. I would literally rather perish. Meanwhile, in another wing of the vast estate, a different one of Eugene's new siblings is confronting his own destiny. Lovelian, the master of the Red Tower of Magic, stands before Eward, the Patriarch's eldest son, informing him that his apprenticeship will not be unconditional. He clarifies that the Red Tower's primary specialization is in the complex art of summoning magic. Eward will first be dispatched to the magical kingdom of Arath to have his fundamental aptitude assessed. Standing beside his mother, Tanis, Eward asks with a flicker of hope, and what happens if I do possess the aptitude? Lovelian replies, that would be ideal, but you must understand Arath could not care less about the Lionheart name. Unless Eward displays enough raw talent to truly distinguish himself, he cannot become my personal disciple. Oh, I see, Eward responds, his shoulders visibly slumping. It's a crushing blow to his already paper-thin confidence. Lovelian softens his tone marginally, adding that due to his long-standing friendship with Gilead, Eward will be afforded plenty of opportunities. He vows to shield Eward from any prejudice and to assist him in finding an environment that is perfectly suited to his own unique magic, whatever form it may take. Eward's heart hammers in his chest, a turbulent mix of sheer terror and a tiny, flickering ember of hope. He thinks to himself that it doesn't matter if he isn't Lovelian's direct student, he's just ecstatic to finally leave this suffocating family and learn magic. In a clan where the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides their true potential, he glances nervously at his father, Gilead, searching for some kind of reassurance. But Gilead merely offers a faint, unreadable smile. There's no need to look to me, he states calmly. This is your, effectively placing the entire burden squarely upon his son's shoulders. Father, I had whispered, turning to the only person he feels he can appeal to. But his mother, Theanis, cuts in, her voice as sharp and frigid as ice. She informs him that this is a rare opportunity granted by his father, and he ought to show some gratitude. She pointedly reminds him that he was always more fascinated by magic than swordsmanship anyway. With that, she seizes his arm, her grip shockingly powerful. But Ayad, she says, her voice dropping to a low, intense whisper, her eyes practically glowing with a terrifying light. You are the one destined to become the Patriarch, she commands. Even in Arath, you will not dare forget that. Theanis, Gilead's sharp voice slicing through her intense tirade. She immediately releases Ayad, her composure instantly restored. I am merely encouraging him, as any mother would, she states smoothly, but the true message behind her words was utterly unmistakable. She knows her rival, that wretched Anacelia, will be ecstatic that Eode is being sent away. Yet, she feels cornered, with no other choice. She gazes at her son, the vessel for all her ambitions. She's painfully aware that Ayad wasn't born with the innate talent of a true Lionheart. He's naive and utterly weak-willed. His only path forward is to travel to Aruf, forge powerful connections, and construct a base of support to secure his birthright. She meets his gaze one last time. Ayad, you are the legitimate heir of the Lionheart family. Yes, mother, he replies, his head bowed beneath the crushing weight of her expectations. The day following the banquet, the various families begin their departure. Lone leaves with Ayad, escorting the heir on the first step of a very long journey. The other children from the collateral branches also return to their homes, leaving the main estate feeling profoundly quieter. Eugene and Guard remain in the now empty outbuilding. Guard, utterly drained from the emotional marathon, simply collapses onto a bed. But for Eugene, the real work is just beginning. This is the very chapter where the tale of how a hero becomes strongest manhwa hides its most critical first step. Today is the day he will learn to wield mana for the first time since his reincarnation. Mana development is split into two distinct types: breathing, where one collects mana directly from the atmosphere, and body training, where one accumulates it through intense physical action. Breathing is widely considered the more refined of the two techniques, but neither path is easy. Eugene reflects on his past life. As Hamill, he began with a rough and tumble body training method, but later transitioned to the breathing technique on the advice of his comrades, Sienna and Vermouth. He is well aware that the Lionheart's signature technique is, in fact, breathing. He is more than ready to commence. He walks out to a clearing in the woods, where a familiar figure leans casually against a tree, clearly waiting for him. It's Cyan, Gilead's younger. He offers Eugene a smile. "You're here, let's get started then." Cyan leads him deep into a section of the forest filled with glowing motes of concentrated energy. This is an artificial vein of mana, created by Vermouth himself 300 years ago. Eugene can't help but smirk. It figures a monster like Vermouth would create a monstrous place like this. "Are you nervous?" Cyan asks. Noticing the look on Eugene's face, Eugene beams, a brilliant and honest smile spreading across his features. "I'm excited." And for the first time in a very long time, he truly means it. Cyan cautions him that this won't be easy. He'll offer his help, but it's still Eugene's first attempt, and it's always easier to sense mana at a younger age. He uses the other children as an example. The twins began their training at age 6, and it still took them a full 4 days to feel mana. Ayod, on the other hand, took an entire week. Cyan explains that most of the branch family, for most children, it takes roughly a month just to get the faintest sense of mana. However, Cyan quickly reassures him that his case will be different. "But it won't take that long for you," he says, gesturing to the vibrant, mana-saturated air. "We have this place, and I'll be personally guiding you." "So, how many days will it take?" Eugene inquires. Cyan pauses to consider. 10 days, perhaps. In response, Eugene offers a sweet and innocent smile. "Ah, I understand." But internally, he's scoffing at the notion. A devious, self-assured grin stretches across his face. He's not merely planning to beat the record. He intends to utterly shatter it. Asterisk. "It won't even take me 10 minutes, asterisk," he thinks. Cyan then leads him toward a small, unassuming cabin nestled deep within the heart of the mana-rich woods, deep inside the Lionheart forest, concealed within a cottage built upon a secret ley line of mana. Here, Eugene's real training is finally set to commence. Cyan guides him into the simple, rustic interior of the cabin. The very atmosphere here is dense with palpable power, a place engineered for a single, solitary purpose. "This way," Cyan says with a knowing grin, as he gestures toward a concealed passageway. They descend a flight of stone steps, venturing deep beneath the earth to where the mana is at its absolute peak concentration. The stairway opens up into an expansive, shadowy chamber, its floor etched with a massive and intricate golden circle that emits a faint glow in the surrounding darkness. Cyan points directly to the epicenter of the circle. "Sit right there in the middle." Eugene kneels down, placing his palm flat against the golden inscription. He can immediately feel an immense power humming just beneath the surface. Cyan then begins his explanation, revealing that the main family's mana training method is a direct inheritance from their great ancestor, the legendary Vermouth. He clarifies that due to a strict rule, the collateral branches were only ever instructed in an imitation version, known as the Red Flame method. But this is the genuine article, a secret passed down only through the main family. The key to how one *** becomes strongest Manhwa hides *** in its mastery. As he speaks, an unbelievable aura of pure power erupts from his body. A torrent of pristine, white energy surges around Cyan, his hair whipping upward from the sheer force of the release. Wisps of brilliant, ethereal fire begin to dance around him. This is the ultimate technique of the lion, the White Flame method. Cyan smiles, his golden eyes glowing, radiating an energy that is both breathtakingly beautiful and completely overwhelming. Eugene is left utterly stunned. He thinks to himself, "I didn't know its name, but I remember that *** unique form. A vivid memory from 300 years prior flashes through his mind. Vermouth, cloaked in that very same dense, white fire that resembled the majestic mane of a lion. A powerful surge of frustration and renewed determination courses through him. I** could never overcome that flame, but this time will be different. Cyan's powerful aura recedes. He then tells Eugene that since he is not yet able, they will begin with simple breathing exercises. Seated in the center of the circle, Eugene speaks up without a moment's hesitation. "I can feel it." Cyan simply chuckles, dismissing the claim. "You're just imagining things. It can feel that way if you concentrate too intensely." He decides to play a small trick on the boy to prove his point, gathering a tiny wisp of mana on his finger, intending to show Eugene it's all in his head. He flicks the wisp of mana, sending it dancing playfully around Eugene, who remains perfectly still with his eyes closed. Cyan wears a smug smile. "See? You can't sense it yet." But he's suddenly cut off by Eugene, which is calm and filled with certainty. "There." Eugene points a single finger to his side, tracking the mana with perfect accuracy. "The mana is gathering over here now." Cyan, feeling a bit less confident, begins to move the mana around more rapidly, but Eugene follows its every move without fail. It's here now, then from here to here. Now up and down again. Finally, a mischievous grin playing on his lips. With no effort at all, he gathered the ball of light into his own hand. Just how long are you planning to drag this out? He inquired. Jian was absolutely staggered, his jaw practically hitting the floor. The notion was absurd. He knew that sensing mana within 10 days was considered legendary. Yet Eugene was moving at an impossible pace. He couldn't suppress a laugh, covering his face in utter disbelief. This child was shattering every known convention. Composing himself, he strode over to Eugene, his entire demeanor having shifted dramatically. The lesson had just taken a profoundly serious turn. If you can already feel the mana, we can commence immediately, his tone now grave. From this point forward, do not speak. Simply concentrate on the sensations within your body. Understood, Eugene answered, his expression becoming intensely focused as he shut his eyes. Jian settled down opposite him, placing his hands upon Eugene's. Breathe deeply, he commanded. As Eugene inhaled, a potent surge of mana coursed from Jian's hands and flooded his body, jump-starting the entire process. Jian's voice served as a guide, instructing him to circulate the mana throughout his system using the white flame method, channeling it all towards his heart to forge his mana core. Mana streamed steadily between them, forming a flawless circuit of pure, untainted energy. After a brief moment, Jian withdrew his hands, observing with rapt attention. All right, you're performing admirably, he commented, though his expression betrayed his complete and utter astonishment. A soft, blue flame now flickered to life around Eugene. He wasn't merely sensing the mana, he was already commanding it. Jian was finding this impossible to believe. This was beyond doing well. It was as if the very essence of how one becomes strongest Manhwa hides behind that innocent face, as Eugene expertly tuned the mana in a body that had only just been awakened to it. He stood frozen, hand on his chin, completely baffled by the spectacle unfolding before him. In Eugene's mind, however, a single thought echoed relentlessly. This is unbelievable. To feel mana, to breathe mana, this was the moment he had been yearning for. He was aware his past life's experience was a factor, but this new body was accepting mana with an almost frightening ease. He could feel his strength amplifying with each and every breath. Yet, he could also feel the immense strain. There was a clear limit to what his unconditioned body could withstand. He could sense himself approaching that very threshold. And in the next instant, it happened. A dazzling flash of light erupted from his heart as every ounce of mana he had gathered converged, creating his very first mana core. Eugene's eyes flew open, beads of sweat forming on his brow. He had actually done it. In a matter of mere minutes, he had achieved a feat that takes most individuals weeks, if not months, to accomplish. Jian gawked at him, his face a canvas of awe and profound shock. He could feel it. Not only had Eugene successfully formed a core, but its sheer size was staggering. Most people begin with a minuscule core and dedicate years of training to expand it. A wide, incredulous grin spread across Jian's face. You're an absolute monster, he declared, the words laced with unfeigned admiration. Is that supposed to be a compliment? Eugene quipped, grinning back as he bumped fists with his newfound mentor. Jian simply let out a hearty laugh. It most certainly is. Let's head back, Jian suggested, still visibly shaken by the event. Eugene clenched his fist, feeling the nascent power humming through his veins. As they made their way back through the sun-dappled forest, Jian began to outline the next phase of the training. He explained to Eugene that the most significant distinction of the white flame method is the division of the core. No matter how diligently one trains with the inferior red flame method, you are forever limited to a single one. The white flame method, on the other, was entirely different. Once a certain threshold of power is reached, the core splits, enabling the user to contain far more mana and to amplify their power. Each of these divided cores is called a star, and the genius who created this method, the Great Vermouth, was a true legend who achieved the pinnacle of 10 stars, a feat no one has ever accomplished since. Jian stated proudly, my brother and I both possess 6 stars. He added that the other children are all at a single star, though he expects the twins might reach their second by next year. To put that into perspective, since the twins began their training at age 6, it will have taken them roughly 8 years just to advance from 1 star to 2. Eugene gazed up at him, his eyes wide with intrigue. And what about me? Jian offered, you, he said with absolute confidence, will be far faster than them, as long as you don't grow lazy. Eugene pumped his fists, putting on a grand display of eagerness. I'll be incredibly diligent. But internally, his thoughts were far more predatory. He scoffed to himself. He knew the classic tale of how one becomes strongest Manhwa hides its true potential, and he'd just been handed an incredible body and his rival's own training method. There was absolutely no way he would let this opportunity go to waste. He was already strategizing, wondering if he could truly reach 10 stars like Vermouth. However, his plan was to meticulously analyze the method as he trained. If he discovered a single flaw, he would simply reshape it to suit himself. A cunning smile danced across his lips. Thank you, Vermouth, he thought. Thanks to you leaving this little gift behind, there is so much I'll be able to accomplish. They soon arrived back at the outbuilding where Eugene was lodged. Jian mentioned he would report to Gilead, then patted Eugene on the shoulder. You must be exhausted, so go on and get some rest. Yes, I understand, Eugene replied with a cheerful and obedient smile. But the very moment Jian turned his back, Eugene's entire expression hardened. Not a chance. He clenched his fist, feeling the raw, new energy surging through his veins. He knew this minor fatigue would completely vanish after a good night's sleep, and now that he could finally wield mana, there was something he absolutely had to do. A familiar, timid voice called out his name. Young Master Eugene. It was his personal maid, Nena, who was running toward him, clearly surprised to see him return so early. Have you returned already? No, Eugene stated, his voice sharp with purpose. Bring me wind. A moment later, Nena stood at a safe distance as Eugene held the legendary storm blade in his hands. He gripped the hilt tightly, his brow furrowed in deep concentration. He knew this blade was bound by a contract to a powerful spirit, but he had no idea if it would actually respond to him. Taking a deep breath, he poured his newly awakened mana directly into the sword. The blade began to hum, glowing with a brilliant, azure light. Nena could only watch in utter shock as a powerful gust of wind suddenly erupted from the sword. She screamed as the wind intensified into a gale, throwing her completely off her feet. The winds then coalesced into a massive, swirling tempest, a vortex of pure, raw elemental power that came to dominate the sky. And from the very heart of that storm, a voice echoed directly into Eugene's mind. It was a voice filled with ancient power and profound disbelief. Are you, truly Hamill? Eugene stared up at the swirling voice, his eyes wide with astonishment. I remember, he thought, a jolt of pure recognition surging through him. This voice. It's definitely. His hair whipped violently around his face as the spirit's power surged. He knew exactly who this was. The elemental spirit king of wind himself, Tempest. The vortex of the tempest raged around him as the ancient voice of the spirit king echoed once more in his mind. Hamill, have you been reincarnated? Eugene stood his ground, bracing against the gale, his eyes wide with disbelief. How did you recognize me? He yelled into the raging storm, just as a face began to form in the swirling the winds, its voice resounding with absolute certainty. Hamill, companion to Vermouth. It is impossible for me to ever forget you, regardless of how much time has passed, for a soul never truly changes. The spirit conveyed that a vast period had elapsed since its last summoning. At first, it presumed another of Vermouth's descendants sought its power, but then it sensed it the undeniable, unforgettable essence of Hamill. Eugene's expression contorts into a mask of pure rage. He has no interest in a sentimental reunion. There is only one crucial thing he must ascertain. Why did Vermouth spare the other demon kings? He bellows, thrusting his sword toward the swirling vortex, demanding a response. Answer me, Tempest. You were present even after my death. The spirit's voice was laced with deep regret. I cannot say what Vermouth truly intended. The path of one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides many secrets. He then unveiled a staggering revelation. During the final confrontation with the demon king of incarceration, Vermouth actually sheathed his own blade. What? Eugene gasped, his mind struggling to process the sheer disbelief. Tempest proceeded to recount the harrowing memory of that last, brutal conflict. A battle that concluded without any sense of victory. After every other hero had been struck down, only two remained standing. Vermouth and the demon king of incarceration. And in that pivotal moment, Vermouth deliberately put away his sword. He refused to slay the demon king of incarceration, and he made no move to confront the final threat, the demon king of apocalypse. Eugene could only stare, the words striking him like a physical assault. He sheathed his sword. After all the sacrifices they had made, a torrent of pure, unadulterated fury erupted from within him. Do not mock me! He roared, his face a twisted visage of fury. The stories claim he made a pact, he yelled, desperate for any kind of explanation. What was the deal? Of that pact, I know nothing, Tempest answered solemnly. Eugene's rage surged uncontrollably. Then what in the hell do you know? The spirit clarified. Only those present for the conversation know what was truly spoken. The very instant Vermouth sheathed his blade, Tempest, being a summoned entity, was forcibly ejected from that space. But you said everyone else was unconscious. Eugene shouted in sheer frustration. What am I supposed to do? Go ask Vermouth's corpse. The swirling winds started to diminish. Our time is running out, Tempest's voice cautioned. The spirit elaborated that Eugene lacked the power to summon it in the first place. It had to forcefully breach the barrier to connect, and now that gateway was rapidly closing. The next time we speak, Tempest's voice started to wane. Answer me before you... Eugene shrieked, but his plea was futile. The spirit's parting words echoed in the void. Summon me again when you have become strong enough. Answer me! Eugene choked out, just as the spiritual link was violently severed. The overwhelming strain on his body and mind proved too great. The raging tempest dissipated into nothingness. Eugene's body gave out, and he collapsed to the ground, his sword clanging against the stone beside him. His maid, Na, who had been cowering in the distance, witnessed his fall. Young Master Eugene, she cried out, scrambling to his side as he lay completely still, a thin trickle of blood staining his lip. Much later, Eugene awoke in the comfort of his own bed, with pale moonlight filtering through the window pane. His eyelids fluttered open, his consciousness slowly returning from the abyss. He groaned, pushing himself into a sitting position while clutching his throbbing head. He recognized the debilitating sensation immediately. Complete mana exhaustion. He stared down at his trembling hand. I must have drained every last ounce of mana. He replayed the conversation in his mind. Elementals could recognize souls, and Tempest had called him Hamill. This incredible fact finally put to rest the persistent, nagging doubt that had plagued him for so long. What if he wasn't truly Hamill, but merely a boy whose mind had been imprinted with another's memories? A faint, relieved smile graced his lips. This settles everything, he thought, his hand clenching into a determined fist. I really am the reincarnation of Hamill. There isn't a shred of doubt left. At that very moment, the door creaked open, and Na cautiously peeked inside, her face etched with concern. A look of pure worry on her face. Young Master Eugene, are you unharmed? She asks, darting to his side. Eugene simply waves a dismissive hand. I'm fine, he rasps, his voice still hoarse. How long was I unconscious? For about half a day, she answers. Eugene lets out a soft sigh. My apologies for causing you concern. Nina hastily informs him that the Patriarch and Master Gillen are waiting to see him, then scurries off to fetch them. Moments later, Gilead and Gillen stand at his bedside, their faces etched with gravity. Gillen, with his arms folded tightly, looks particularly irritated, while Gilead's expression is one of deep concern. The Patriarch begins, I've heard the report from Nina. A tremendous storm you drew forth winneth. He fixes Eugene with a sharp, penetrating gaze. Did you, by chance, summon an elemental? Eugene remains silent for a beat, carefully considering his next words. He understands that revealing the entire truth is impossible, but a storm of that magnitude demands some kind of explanation. A blatant lie would be futile, so he offers them a meticulously crafted half-truth. The elemental king of wind, he appeared before me. His words strike both Gilead and Gillen into a state of stunned silence. What? Gillen finally chokes out, his face a mask of utter disbelief. Eugene, however, musters his most innocent and bashful smile. He explains that the Great Spirit King was merely curious, seeing as it had been a very long time since he was last called forth. Is that truly what happened? Gillen blurts out, thoroughly flustered. He knows full well that no one in the Lionheart clan has successfully summoned an elemental king since the Great Vermouth himself. Undeterred, Eugene continues his tale. Yes, he says. The elemental king told me that I am not yet strong enough. He elaborates that the spirit pledged to meet him again once he has grown more powerful, before returning to his own realm. This is the perfect narrative. It's plausible, awe-inspiring, and this tale of how he becomes strongest Manhwa hides the most crucial facts about his true nature. Hearing this, Gilead throws his head back and erupts in a hearty, booming laugh, while Gillen just stares, visibly sweating as he tries to process the sheer, mind-boggling absurdity of the situation. Gilead turns to Eugene with a wide, deeply impressed grin. Eugene, you are without a doubt a fascinating child. He then reveals that Gillen had already told him what transpired earlier, that Eugene had sensed mana instantly and even formed a core using the white flame formula. That feat alone is astounding, Gilead declared, his smile stretching even wider. But to think you would also capture the attention of the elemental king of wind, it's simply unheard of. Eugene just offers a sheepish little chuckle, flawlessly playing the role of the humble, prodigiously talented child. Gilead takes a seat on the edge of the bed. You must rest for a few days. Gillen will resume your training after that. He confesses that he was originally planning to depart for his own training, but now he feels that witnessing Eugene's talent blossom might be a far more significant endeavor. Eugene expresses his gratitude, but insists that he doesn't wish to impede their own training schedules. However, Gillen interjects, wagging a finger. Nonsense. Don't even think. I want to be the one to teach you. He is genuinely thrilled by the prospect of mentoring such a monstrous talent. He then adds that he will also be instructing Cyan and Seal, with Gilead assisting as well. It seems a new, intense training regimen is about to commence for all the children of the main family. A pensive expression crosses Gilead's face as his thoughts drift to his other children. He can only hope they will view Eugene as a source of inspiration, rather than a target for their resentment. The scene shifts to the twins, sparring late into the night. A new fire has clearly been ignited within both of them. Seal smirks at her brother during a brief respite. Did you hear the news? Eugene has already achieved the first star. I'm aware, Cyan bites back, his expression grim. Seal complains that it took them an eternity to reach their own first star. Cyan retorts that achieving it in a single month is one of the fastest records in the entire history of their family. But that's precisely the point. The two prodigies, the very pride of the main family, were now confronted with an undeniable and galling truth. Eugene had attained his first star in a single day. With their rivalry fiercely rekindled, they threw themselves back into their training, their blades clashing with an intensity far greater than before. A cerulean shockwave erupted at the point of impact. The gauntlet had been thrown, and neither of them had any intention of being left in the dust. Later that night, within the solitude of his chambers, Eugene lay in bed, waiting, before sitting up to scan the empty room. Everyone's gone, right? He mused to himself, reaching over to grab Neath as his hand closed around the familiar hilt. He swung his legs out of bed, holding the legendary sword and feeling its reassuring weight. He carefully channeled a minuscule amount of mana into the blade, just enough to elicit a response. A tiny, fairy-like creature materialized from the steel, fluttering in the still air. A sylph, Eugene thought, instantly recognizing the low-level elemental. This is all I can manage with my remaining mana. He stared intently at the tiny. Did you hear anything from your king? He asked. The sylph merely stared back with vacant, glowing eyes, remaining utterly silent. Eugene sighed in frustration, running a hand through his hair. I can't even hold a conversation with an elemental of such low intelligence. He glared at the sylph, his eyes flashing with a cold menace. Go and tell Tempest that if he dared to lie to me, I will end him. The tiny spirit seemed to bristle with anger. puffing out its cheeks in defiance of the threat. With a casual flick of his wrist, Eugene dismissed the spirit, sending it retreating back into the confines of the sword. He paced across his room, weapon in hand, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. He replayed Tempest's words in his mind. He, Hamill, was the only one who had perished at the castle of the Demon King of Incarceration. The other 4 heroes, Vermouth included, had all returned from the demonic lands of Helmuth unscathed. He sat down on his bed, gripping his sword so tightly his knuckles turned white. The only ones who know the terms of that deal are Vermouth and the Demon King of Incarceration. A new resolve hardened his gaze. Someday, I will have to venture into Helmuth. No, not just Helmuth. He then thought of his other former comrades. Sienna in the magic kingdom of Aruth, Anise in the holy empire of Eurus, and Molin in the barbarian lands of Luhar. If he could only reach those places, he might finally learn what became of them after his death. But he knew, with frustrating certainty, that he couldn't go there yet. He glanced down at his small hands. This young body can't possibly withstand a journey to lands so far away. But someday, he clenched his fist, his eyes burning with raw determination. Someday, he would be strong enough, and he would finally uncover the truth. For most people, 4 years is a significant amount of time. For Eugene, it was merely the start of his ascent back to the summit. Ever since his adoption into the Lionheart clan, he had pushed this divinely gifted body to its absolute breaking point, day in and day out. Now at 17 years of age, he looked in the mirror and saw a near stranger staring back. Time, he mused, really does fly. A faint smirk touched his lips. He couldn't deny the truth of it. This body was a masterpiece, forged through years of relentless mana training. He could feel the immense power coursing through his very veins. Reaching the 3rd star of the White Flame formula was an achievement that would make any other member of the family weep with envy. Yet, as he stared at his own reflection, the fleeting satisfaction simply melted away. This wasn't nearly enough for the soul of Hamill, the man who once fought beside the great hero. This is barely a start. His expression hardened. The path to where one becomes strongest Manhwa hides its secrets from the complacent. He had to go beyond anything he had ever known, even in his past life. Gazing out over the vast Lionheart estate, the place he had called home for years. After 4 years, a new ambition solidifies in his mind. He must journey to Aroth and master the art of magic. What in the world are you rambling on about? Cyan's voice sliced through the tension, laced with sharp disbelief and mounting frustration, as the memory of that very morning's training session seared itself into his thoughts. Eugene had been completely serene, practicing the White Flame method, just as he did every other day. Suddenly, Cyan's eyes shot open as a dreadful realization clicked into place. Impossible, he whispered, but Eugene's smug grin was all the confirmation required. Right in the middle of their spar, Eugene's mana had erupted. 3 distinct cores of light materialized, spinning into existence. A dazzling blue aura then exploded from his body, the very air crackling with the raw power of the 3rd star of the White Flame method. Cyan was violently thrown back, utterly powerless, as Eugene loomed over him, radiant, an absolutely overwhelming presence. What? How is this possible? Cyan stammered, his hand trembling as it began to dissolve into motes of... He simply couldn't process it. It felt like a story where the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides their true growth as the bitter reality crashed down upon him. Eugene had begun learning mana a full 7 years after he did. 7 entire years. And yet, he had already achieved 3 stars while Cyan remains stagnant at 2. For Eugene, however, the explanation was simple. Combining his innate genius with the vast experience of his past life, this outcome was always inevitable. He gazed down at his seething brother with a playful smirk, casually joking that he felt like ending him. But Cyan, ever the serious one, shot back that such words were forbidden between family. Besides, Cyan griped, Eugene already thrashed him within an inch of his life. Every single morning during their training spars, Eugene merely shrugged, completely unfazed. He coolly reminded Cyan that he was the one who came pleading for a fight each day. If he couldn't take the heat, he should simply stop asking for it. Cyan ground his teeth in frustration, knowing full well he had no retort. He was, after all, the one who willingly subjected himself to this humiliation, desperate for even a single chance at victory. Returning to the present moment, Cyan pressed him further, demanding to know why he suddenly wanted to learn magic, and then brought up their older brother, Yod. He recounted how Yod had traveled to Aroth to study magic, only to fail at impressing any of the great mages, and secure a position as a disciple. Cyan explained that even after using the family name to gain entry into the Red Tower of Magic, he had accomplished absolutely nothing in 4 years, essentially just coasting on the family's esteemed reputation. A dark flicker of annoyance flashed across Eugene's expression. You really don't hold back when talking about your own brother, do you? At that, Cyan flinched, stammering that he wasn't exactly wrong. Eugene shot back, telling him to stop acting like he knew the full story. But then, Cyan suddenly softened, taking on a desperate edge. If you leave for Aroth, he began, lowering his head, unable to meet Eugene's eyes, Seal will be devastated. Eugene arched a curious eyebrow. Oh? He questioned, his voice tinged with amusement. He was referring to Seal, the very same girl who had barely uttered a single word until just recently. He turned his back on Cyan, tossing his practiced sword aside with a sharp clap. That's nice for her, he said dismissively. Cyan called out, asking where he was headed. Without a backward glance, Eugene announced he was going to see the Patriarch. A confident smirk played on his lips. He figured he might as well report his newly achieved 3-star status and simultaneously get the Patriarch's permission to leave all in one go. He strode away, leaving Cyan standing there utterly defeated. With a swift, Eugene sent Cyan's sword spinning through the air, a final, unspoken rejection of his protests. Cyan could only watch him depart, muttering in frustration about why his brother always had to stir up trouble. Meanwhile, inside the Patriarch's office, Eugene Lionheart Gilad stared at his adopted son, a lone bead of sweat trickling down his temple. "Are you truly serious?" he asked, as Eugene stood before him, his posture resolute and unyielding. "I am," Eugene confirmed. "I wish to travel to Eroth and study magic." Gilad leaned forward in his seat, completely baffled. He reminded Eugene that no one in history had ever achieved the 3rd star at such a tender age. If he continued on this path, he could very well reach the 4th star before even reaching adulthood. But Eugene explained that attaining the 3rd star was precisely the catalyst for this decision. He felt that if he remained here, merely repeating the same training routines, his development would inevitably stagnate. He desired to broaden his horizons. Even if he possessed no natural talent for magic, studying it would grant him an entirely new perspective on the very nature of mana. His eyes blazed with conviction. He was certain that mastering a completely different discipline would be an invaluable experience, one that would aid him immensely in the long run. He bowed deeply, his voice perfectly steady. "I implore you to grant my request, Lord Patriarch." Gilad let out a sigh, his expression a complicated mixture of shock and admiration. This boy was truly on another level. It's like a tale where the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides his true potential, and he saw that in Eugene's unquenchable thirst for power. "Raise your head," Gilad commanded. Eugene straightened up, his gaze never wavering. A rare smile finally broke through Gilad's typically stern facade. "As the patriarch of this family, how could I possibly deny such a fervent desire to grow even stronger?" He told Eugene that he understood, but then his expression shifted, becoming deadly serious. He had a single condition. "Promise me this one thing," he said, his voice low and firm. "You will not get involved with black magic." He went on to explain that in Iraq, the Black Tower of Magic was a known institution, and the dark art was no longer as forbidden as it had been in the past. "However," he declared, his voice heavy with the weight of his ancestors, "the Lionhearts are the descendants of the Great Vermouth. We carry an unspoken duty to stand in opposition to black magic." Eugene's expression darkened instantly. Demon kings, demons, black mages. The unspeakable horrors they had unleashed 300 years ago were still seared into the very fabric of his soul. He looked Gilad directly in the eye. "You have no need to worry about that." A cold, yet genuine smile spread across his face. "I despise black magic more than anyone else in this world." With his permission secured, Eugene walked through the grand halls of the family mansion, his mind already racing ahead to the journey that awaited him. He paused outside a large set of doors and knocked gently. A voice called out from within the room. "Spare a moment to talk with me," the voice requested softly. "It's Seal." Leaning casually against the wall, Eugene told her to come out if she wanted to talk, mentioning that he had just finished training and smelled of sweat. The door cracked open, and Seal's quiet voice drifted out from the shadows within. "Are you truly leaving for Eroth?" Eugene wasn't the least bit surprised by her question. He figured Cyan must have told her, and she confirmed his suspicion, adding that she'd also heard he had achieved the 3rd star. Seal then asked why he felt the need to go. She pointed out that they had access to spirit magic right here within the family. He could simply summon a private tutor instead of leaving home. Then, her true concern slipped out, her voice barely a whisper. Yet her eyes gleamed with a competitive fire. "While you are away, Cyan and I, we might just catch up to you." Eugene simply smiled, looking genuinely pleased by the thought. "That's a good thing," he said. "It will make our sparring sessions far more entertaining when I return." A nostalgic expression crossed his face. "It's actually been quite some time since I've sparred with you." Seal's cheeks flushed as she looked down at the floor, hesitating for a moment before making a desperate, "If I agree to spar with you from now on, will you stay?" Eugene was taken aback for a second, but his resolve remains resolute. "No, I'm still leaving." Her shoulders sag in defeat as she whispers, "You're truly horrible." Her face is lost to the shadows, her voice a fragile tremor. "How long will you be away?" He confesses he won't know for certain until he arrives there. "But it will be a few years, at least." "But why must it be for so many years?" She presses, her hands fidgeting nervously, adding that it must be incredibly difficult to be so far from home for such a long time. Eugene tries to inject some levity, mentioning his father, Guard. "My father will be perfect," he says with a confident grin, explaining how Guard has settled into the main house and has even shed some weight from all his hunting excursions. Seal continues to push, her tone heavy with sadness. "Uncle Gian will be devastated." Eugene quietly concedes that he probably will be. "What about my brother?" she asks, her eyes pleading with him. I could sense that he truly didn't want you to leave." Eugene pauses, leaning against the doorframe with a knowing smirk. "Is that so?" "Because I'm going anyway." His expression then turns serious as he meets her gaze. "Train diligently," he commands. His words seem to strike her with an unexpected gravity. With that, he pivots and walks away, the sound of his boots echoing down the corridor. As he vanishes down the long hallway, Cheel peeks out from her hiding spot, watching his retreating back. "Are you really, truly going?" she asks one final time, her voice cracking under the weight of her emotions. Eugene doesn't look back. He simply raises a hand in a final, simple gesture of farewell. "Goodbye, Seal mouths, biting her lip as tears well up, her glare fixed on his. "You're just awful," she mutters again, the words now drenched in sorrow. The heavy doors swing shut, abandoning her to the silence of the empty hall, and in that quiet, she finally whispers the words she could not say directly to him. "I don't want you to go either." Saying farewell is never a simple task. Before departing for the warp gate, Eugene stands before his birth father, Guard, for one last exchange. With a warm smile, Guard imparts some classic fatherly wisdom. "Don't fall in with the wrong crowd in a wrath, and be sure you study diligently." Eugene fires back with a teasing smirk. "And you, father, better not slack off on your own training just because I'm not here." It was his own rough manner of showing his deep affection. Guard laughs, rising to his full height with a look of proud astonishment on his face. "Eugene," he says, his voice thick with feeling. "You're even taller than I am now." Eugene just smirks. In 4 short years, he had not only grown in power, he had developed the formidable physique of a true Lionheart. Guard's expression turns grave, his eyes filled with concern. "Take good care of yourself," he urges, the simple words carrying the immense weight of a long and uncertain goodbye. At the warp gate, the family is gathered to witness his departure. The Patriarch Gilead, his mentor Cyan, Anacilia, Cyan, Seal, and even his personal mate, Nena, are all there. Gilead asks if he is certain he doesn't require guards. It is a practical inquiry, but one layered with deep concern for the family's ascending star, yet Eugene is radiating pure confidence. "Yes, don't you worry," he replies with his signature cocky grin. He was more than capable of handling himself. A surge of pride fills Gilead. He thinks to himself that Eugene, who had already reached the 3rd star, was nothing like his other son-eyed. The way he *** becomes strongest, Manhwa hides *** a depth of talent that makes the family's future feel immeasurably brighter. The final goodbyes are mostly unspoken. Anacilia observes with a cold, calculating gaze, Seal with a quiet sorrow, and Cyan just stares, a tempest of rivalry and begrudging respect churning in his eyes. And then, the moment finally descends. Guard completely falls apart, with tears streaming uncontrollably down his face. Eugene lets out an exasperated sigh, pleading, "Father, please stop crying." He gently chides him. "You were perfectly fine just a moment ago. Why are you falling apart now?" But Guard can only wail his son's name in response. Eugene raises a hand, making it clear that tears won't convince him to stay. "Can't you at least send your son off with a smile?" he asks. Guard desperately tries to compose himself, scrubbing at his eyes with his fists. He finally manages to produce a wobbly, tear-streaked. It's a sight that's simultaneously heartbreaking and amusing, a father doing his absolute best to be strong for his son. Eugene offers a small, fond smile in return. The moment for goodbyes has passed. After taking one final look back at his family, he turns and strides resolutely toward the shimmering blue portal. As he steps into the swirling vortex of mana, he offers a final parting promise. "I'll see you again." And just like that, he is gone. In the blink of an eye, he materializes in another world, the capital of the Magic Kingdom, Aroth, a city known as Pentagon. The view that greets him is absolutely breathtaking. Majestic towers pierce the clouds, while entire islands of Earth drift serenely through the sky. Magical vehicles gracefully weave between these floating landmasses. The city itself is laid out in the magnificent shape of a star, and Eugene finds himself aboard a flying carriage, a true marvel of magical engineering, soaring high above the sprawling metropolis. He gazes out at the incredible vista, completely lost in his thoughts. He had visited Aroth in his past life, but it was nothing compared to this. The level of advancement is staggering. Aroth stands as the only kingdom, with a warp gate suspended in the sky, a clear symbol of its magical supremacy. These floating stations are not just a matter of convenience, they are also a massive commercial success. Isn't it incredible? A cheerful voice pipes up beside him. It belongs to a young man practically buzzing with infectious energy. The guide proudly proclaims that this magnificent vista represents the very pinnacle of Aroth's culture. He goes on to explain that Pentagon boasts 15 of these floating stations, every single one of them created by the legendary Archmage, Sienna the Wise. Eugene decides to play along, feigning astonishment. Wow. Tapping the side of the carriage, he probes for more information. Was this carriage also her creation? Of course, the guide chirps, quickly adding that there's absolutely no need to worry. He explains that even though the technology is several centuries old, it is meticulously maintained on a regular basis, so the accident rate is remarkably low. But it's not zero, Eugene mutters under his breath. Just as the guide begins to ramble on about other tourist attractions, Eugene cuts him short. "Wait," he says, his gaze fixed intently on the city ahead. "First, I want to visit the mansion of Sienna the Wise." The guide's face lights up. "An excellent choice," he exclaims. "There are 3 absolute must-sees in Pentagon: Sienna's mansion, the magic towers, and the cityscape at night." As their carriage glides through the aerial pathways, the guide begins to recount the story of the legendary Archmage. He explains that a full 300 years ago, Sienna became the youngest master of a magic tower in all of recorded history. There's even a statue dedicated to her in the square of the Green Magic Tower. This very mansion, the guide continues, is where she resided until the very end. But 200 years ago, she disappeared. A mystery fitting for a story where the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides all traces of their existence, leaving behind only a simple letter, announcing she was simply retiring. Eugene presses him for more details. "Does anyone know where she went?" The guide can only shake his head. No one has a clue. Her own disciples and all the most powerful mages in Arath launched a massive search for her. They employed every scrying spell and magical artifact imaginable, but it was all for naught. Not a single person ever found even the slightest trace of where she could have. And the most tragic part, the guide adds with dramatic flair, is that the very day she disappeared was her birthday. He leaned in, lowering his voice conspiratorially. This is just my opinion, but I think she went to the demon realm. Helmy. Eugene's eyes narrowed. And why is that? The guide explained the significance of the timing. 200 years ago marked the 100th anniversary of her return from the demon realm, the very day she came back after leaving behind the body of her fallen comrade, the one they called Hamill the Foolish. The guide's voice filled with a misplaced sympathy. He claimed that Sienna never forgot her dead companion and that a burning desire for something more drove her actions. That revenge was her motive for leaving. The guide's eyes glazed over with a dreamy look, clearly swept up in the romanticized version of the story. Surely you've heard the tale, he'd ask. Legend says Lord Hamill was smitten with Madame Sienna and confessed his love with his dying breath. At those words, something inside Eugene just shattered. His face contorted into a mask of pure, demonic fury as he snarled, his voice a guttural growl. Don't you dare spew such nonsense. The tour guide froze solid, his eyes bulging with sheer terror. My apologies, Eugene stammered, scrambling to mask his outburst with a pained, awkward smile. What I meant was... But the guide, completely misreading the situation, seemed to have an epiphany. Ah, I see. You must be one of those purists who despises the romantic angle between Madame Sienna and Hamill, he said. Visibly relieved. Left with no other choice, Eugene could only grit his teeth and nod in agreement. Desperate to change the subject, he then asked if there were any alternative theories surrounding Sienna's disappearance. The guide mentioned it was common knowledge that Sienna loathed dark magic and demons with a passion. She had vehemently opposed the construction of the Black Magic Tower right up until the day she vanished, which led to another popular theory, that a radical faction of dark mages, the very ones who championed the tower's creation, had her taken out. Eugene's hand tightened into a fist, his composure slowly returning. It's impossible. No mere dark mage, no matter how skilled, could ever have laid a hand on Madame Sienna. The guide nodded enthusiastically in agreement. Exactly my thoughts. He confirmed that this was precisely why the theory was ultimately dismissed, but Eugene thought to himself, a dark mage lacks the power to eliminate Sienna. But a demon king? It's a classic scenario. The one who *** becomes strongest, Manhwa hides ***, their true influence behind lesser pawns. The pieces started clicking. He was well aware that the demon realm still secretly funded Arath through the Black Magic Tower. Sienna's very existence, her unwavering opposition, would have been a constant, irritating thorn in their side. His gaze grew cold and sharp, a thorn more than big enough to warrant her permanent removal. Just then, the carriage finally descended, settling onto the stone street below. They had arrived. As Eugene stepped out, his eyes drawn upwards to the grand mansion as his mind raced. Sienna. A massive crowd was already gathered, all staring at the former home of his old friend. A single, heavy question seemed to hang unspoken in the air. Are you truly gone? People were praying towards the building, their voices filled with desperation. One man pleaded aloud, please, let me finally pass the exam and get into the magic tower. I've already been rejected 11 times. Eugene took note of the crowd's sheer size, and the guide explained that they were all aspirants preparing for the magic tower's recruitment test. But the guide smirked, adding that the vast majority of them didn't stand a chance. They were simply too poor. He explained it cost thousands just for a glimpse of the garden and exponentially more to actually step inside. Eugene then asked why the fees were so exorbitant. As they approached the entrance, the guide offered a simple, cynical truth. Because there are always plenty of desperate people willing to pay. He then revealed the source of this desperation. A pervasive myth that praying to Sienna's portrait in the central hall was a surefire way to pass the recruitment exam. Upon reaching the main gate, the guide presented a card to the armored guard. The guard's eyes immediately widened in shock. Emblazoned on the card was the unmistakable crest of the Lionheart family. The guard immediately straightens his posture, his voice trembling as he announces, Sir Eugene Lionheart, confirmed. He nearly stumbles over his own feet in his haste to swing open the gates. Eugene calmly instructs the guide to wait for him outside. The guide offers a deep, respectful bow, wishing him a meaningful tour. The colossal doors groan as they part, revealing the opulent interior beyond. Eugene inhales deeply, a grimly determined smile touching his lips. As he positions himself at the base of the grand staircase, his eyes lifting to the chandelier-illuminated hall. Well then, the pretense of being a curious tourist is now over. This is no simple visit, it's an investigation. All right, wench, he thinks. Let's see the life you actually... A house is far more than a mere building. It's a repository of memories. And as Eugene steps across the threshold into Sienna's grand mansion, he feels as if he's traversing a magnificent empty tomb filled with forgotten dreams. He gazes around at the sheer scale of it all. She had once told him she resided here for 100 years, an entire century, utterly alone. A voice from 300 years in the past whispers through his memory. Hey, Hamill, it's Sienna. Her head was resting on her arms during a rare moment of tranquility amid the endless. She was looking straight at him, asking what he intended to do with his future. Back in those days, he was just Hamill, a mercenary, rapping his knuckles, his mind focused solely on the next fight. The future was a luxury he couldn't afford to entertain. He had asked her why she was even broaching the subject. She replied that after surviving this miserable, drawn-out war, he deserved to find some semblance of happiness when it was all finally over, but he possessed no such dream to share with her. I don't know, he'd answered with stark honesty. Never really thought about it. Just making it to the next day alive was all the planning he needed. Sienna then glanced over at their friend, Malone, who was fast asleep and snoring soundly on the floor. She mentioned that the great lummox dreamed of becoming a king. Hamill couldn't help but scoff at the absurdity. A king? What a ludicrous idea, as if you could simply decide to become one. But Sienna merely smiled. Let him be, she said gently. It's what he desires. People are allowed to have their dreams. Hamill practically recoiled from her sentimental tone. Are you drunk? He demanded, completely caught off guard. Her words, people are allowed to have their dreams, made his skin crawl with secondhand embarrassment. He held up his hands dramatically. Can you see this? My hands are literally shaking from how that instantly shattered her gentle mood. You absolute piece of trash, she shouted, her soft demeanor vanishing. I'm trying to be serious for once. She then pivoted, turning the question back on herself. So, what are my plans for the future? She seemed taken aback by her own stammering for a moment. Me? I want. A soft blush dusted her cheeks as her gaze softened. In that instant, she wasn't the great and powerful archmage, but simply a young woman sharing a quiet, personal hope. She yearned for a normal life to meet someone special, get married, and perhaps even have a child. The memory dissolves, leaving Eugene standing alone in the present, staring up at her portrait. The Sienna in the painting seems to complete the thought from all those years ago. And after that, I want to become a grandmother. A profound wave of sadness and frustration washed over Eugene. You should have met a decent man, he thinks, his heart aching. You should have married and had that peaceful life. It's the classic story where the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides the truth of their loneliness. Why did you spend 100 years in this place all by yourself? Sienna, he whispers, his hand reaching toward the painting as if he could somehow breach the barrier of time and ask her himself. You are not permitted to touch that. A sharp voice slices through his thoughts. A guard has materialized, his arms crossed over his chest and a stern expression fixed on his face. Eugene snatches his hand back, thoroughly annoyed. Damn it, muttering under his breath, I was in the middle of a moment. He tears his gaze from the portrait, his purpose reasserting itself. He wasn't here to get lost in memories. He crisply informs the guard of his intent to visit the basement library. The mansion itself is a symphony of magic and mechanics, yet Eugene pays no mind to the elaborate clockwork adorning the walls. He is a man on a mission. Deep within the vast light, he's dwarfed by towering shelves stretching into the gloom. This had to be the place. This is where she must have hidden a hint about her disappearance, or perhaps even the secret to his own rebirth. But, as his fingers graze a leather spine, the guard's sharp voice cuts through the silence once more. You are forbidden from touching that. Eugene retorts, I'm not touching it. The infuriating truth crashes down on him. He's unable to open a single volume. His only option is to scan the titles, desperately searching for some kind of sign. His mind wanders back to the necklace he'd discovered. Its memories had been overwritten, left to languish in the Lionheart treasury until he, by some twist of fate, stumbled upon it. The sheer coincidence was unbelievable, unless it was intentionally placed for him to find. Much like how the great storm spirit, Tempest, had recognized his very soul, it stood to reason the necklace was also intended for him. The conclusion felt undeniable. His reincarnation had been tampered with, and if Sienna was the one responsible, she would have had a monumental reason for doing so. In a grand tale where a hero becomes strongest, Manhwa hides the true meaning behind such events. She would have left him a breadcrumb, a secret that only he could decipher. He soon finds himself standing before her portrait once more, right back where his fruitless search began. He'd scoured the entire estate, from the library to the bedchambers, every last corner, and had come up with absolutely nothing. The dam of his composure finally begins to crack. He rakes a hand through his hair, utterly defeated. I have no idea, he groans. I don't know a single thing. His simmering anger finally boils over. Fine, I'll just do whatever the hell I want then, he roars at the painted face. If you needed something from me, you should have left a proper damn message. What am I supposed to do when you've all left me in the dark? He shoots a venomous look at the impassive guard before redirecting his fury back to the portrait of his long-lost friend. In that moment, all pretense of being Eugene Lionheart completely dissolves. This was Hamill, raw, desperate, and furious. Hey, Sienna. He raises a hand and presents the painting with a single, defiant finger. Here, he snarls, a bitter smirk twisting his lips. If that offends you, then why don't you come and find me yourself? He holds the pose for a tense moment, waiting, almost daring a response, but the grand mansion remains utterly still and silent. With a heavy sigh, his arm drops, and he turns to finally depart. But he pauses, casting one last look over his shoulder, adding a final, quiet taunt. Assuming you're even still alive, night has since blanketed the glittering city of Pentagon. Outside, his tour guide is overjoyed to see him finally emerge from the estate, quipping that he must have been captivated by the sights to have stayed all the way until sunset. Eugene merely tosses him a coin for his patience. My thanks, the guide says, snatching it from the air with a beaming smile. The guide then asks for his next destination, but Eugene's plans have already shifted. Take me to the Red Tower of Magic immediately, he commands. You can consider your job done after that. as their enchanted carriage soars through the night beneath the glow of a brilliant full moon. Eugene's focus shifts from the ghosts of his past to a much more present danger. He turns to the guide. "Allow me to ask you something." "I, Lionheart," Eugene starts, his tone suddenly devoid of any warmth. "He is my elder brother. Do you know of him?" The guide's cheerful expression instantly vanishes. He begins to stammer that of course every young mage in the city knew that name. Eugene stated plainly that he required a favor from the Red Magic Tower, and given his brother had been studying there for 4 long years, it was vital he understood the situation he was walking into. He leaned forward, his stare piercing and severe. "Can you tell me every rumor you've heard about my brother?" The guy began to perspire heavily, clearly horrified at the prospect of spreading gossip about a scion of the formidable Lionheart family. Eugene explained that, being adopted, he hadn't had the opportunity to speak with him. He just needed to grasp the circumstances so he wouldn't stir up any trouble. He then made a grave promise. "I will not be angered by what you tell me, and I will not repeat it to my family or my brother. I swear this upon my name." His golden eyes seemed to smolder in the darkness, a silent warning of the consequences should the guide refuse. "All you need to do is tell me what people are whispering." Cornered, the guide finally caved. "Well, I don't know everything," he stammered, but he took a deep breath. "They say that Ides seeks out certain pleasures every night, away from the magic tower." Eugene repeated the word thoughtfully. Pleasures. He considered this. Ides was 19 years old. It wouldn't be particularly shocking for a young man to be sowing his wild oats. But the guide shook his head frantically. "No, this isn't just some normal youthful indulgence." He struggled to form the next word. "Sue. Eugene prompted, his confusion growing. "Succubus," the guide finally managed to choke out. For a fleeting moment, Eugene simply stared with a blank expression as he processed the word. "Ah, a succubus." Then, the full weight of the accusation hit him like a physical, his face twisting into a mask of pure rage. He lunged forward, grabbing the terrified guide by his collar. "We are not in the demon lands, so why in the hell is there a succubus?" The guide could only let out a squeak, begging him to calm down. He explained that while this wasn't Helmuth, the kingdom of demons, Eroth is the location of the Black Magic Tower, and it's not just dark mages who reside there. They host a significant number of demons as well. Eugene released his grip, burying his face in his hand, his disgust painfully obvious. "My brother is amusing himself with a succubus from the Black Magic Tower," the guide quickly corrected him, insisting it wasn't for amusement, but specifically for pleasure. He went on to say that like any massive city, Eroth has its dark underbelly, and necessary evil. There's a particular alley known for its black market, but it also contains a few unsavory establishments where succubi work as hostesses, and the rumors all say ID is irregular. Eugene's voice dropped, turning as cold as ice. "Where is this alley?" Practically scrambling to get away from him, blurted out, "It's called Bolero Alley, and it only appears on nights of the full moon." Eugene sank back into his seat, seething. His initial strategy was simple. Keep his head down, concentrate on his own training, a path where the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides their true potential. But this guy, he fumed to himself, the eldest son of the Lionheart line, a descendant of the Great Vermouth, is stooping so low as to dally with a succubus. The guide begged him to keep it a secret. Eugene snapped, reminding him of his oath. "I won't tell anyone. For now, I won't even mention it to that pathetic excuse for a brother of mine." He waved his hand dismissively. "It's nothing more than a rumor. Until I see it with my own 2 eyes, I'll have to suppress the urge to beat the living daylights out of him." His eyes narrowed as he stared out at the full moon. On the night of a full moon, Bolero Alley. As the carriage drew near the Red Magic Tower, Eugene's plans had been completely derailed. The mysteries of the past would have to be put on hold. At this moment, he had a deeply embarrassing family issue to resolve. Having paused his quest for Sienna, Eugene now stood before his next great hurdle, the imposing Red Magic Tower. A young woman, clad in the classic pointed hat of a witch, awaited him at the grand entrance, her eyes widening in astonishment as she took him in. She stammered slightly, inquiring if he was truly Eugene Lionheart, to which Eugene offered a curt nod in response. The witch then introduced herself as Hera and bowed deeply in respect, doffing her hat as she explained that the Tower Master was expecting him upstairs but had been delayed by a small issue. As if summoned by her words, a deafening explosion tore through the upper levels. The entire tower shuddered, and Hera flinched as dust and debris rained down from the ceiling, yet Eugene merely glanced upward, completely unfazed, a spark of curiosity glinting in his eyes. He calmly inquired if there had been some sort of accident. Hera mustered a strained smile, attempting to pass it off as a normal occurrence, explaining that the Red Magic Tower specialized in the art of summoning magic, a discipline where failure was not just a possibility, but a frequent companion. Upstairs, the origin of the chaos became terrifyingly clear as a summoning circle had malfunctioned catastrophically, unleashing 2 ferocious shadow beasts from a dark portal. Before the abominations could wreak havoc, a figure blurred into existence, seizing both of the shadow beasts by their necks in a breathtaking display of incredible speed and overwhelming power. With a guttural roar of pure fury, he crushed their ethereal forms in his grasp, and they dissipated with a tormented shriek, their dark energy dissolving into thin air. It was none other than the Tower Master. Long, blonde hair drifted around him as he hovered mid-air, radiating an immense and powerful magical aura, his face a mask of unadulterated rage. He descended softly before the terrified students, his voice dripping with venomous sarcasm as he demanded to know how on earth they had possibly managed to summon shadow beasts from a circle intended for something completely different. He pointed a trembling finger at them, his anger finally boiling over. He bellowed, demanding to know if they had any idea what would have happened if those things had escaped. A shadow beast possesses no intellect, only a ravenous thirst for destruction, and it would have initiated a massacre in the capital. The students could only quake in terror, stammering out feeble apologies. His patience utterly exhausted, he roared at them to pack their belongings and get out of his tower at once. He took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to regain his composure, but the inferno of anger still smoldered within his eyes. Then, with an impossible grace, he vaulted from the balcony, floating gently down to the main floor. He landed without a single sound directly in front of Eugene, the so-called minor problem having been decisively resolved. The fury etched on his face vanished in an instant, replaced by a brilliant, welcoming smile as he greeted Eugene warmly, remarking that it had been quite some time and that he'd grown considerably. The man, Robarian, chuckled, admitting he had almost failed to recognize. With a subtle smirk, Eugene retorted that Robarian, at least, looked exactly the same as he remembered. Robarian touched his own cheek with a sly grin. Conceding that it required a fair bit of magic to maintain his youthful facade, Eugene began to size him up. This man was vastly more powerful than the version he'd met 4 years prior. It seems the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides their true depths well. Now that he could perceive mana, he understood Robarian was truly a force to be reckoned with. He wasn't on Sienna's level, of course, but he was without a doubt worthy of his title as a master of one of the 5 magic towers. Getting straight to the point, Robarian mentioned that he'd heard Eugene was interested in learning the ways of magic. Eugene confirmed this was true. Robarian agreed that magic was indeed a fascinating subject, but cautioned that it was remarkably difficult. Still, he expressed his confidence that a Lionheart will manage just fine. But then, his welcoming expression completely evaporates. His eyes ignite with a sudden, piercing intensity. He snaps his head to the side, his gaze locking onto a nearby door. Without so much as a word, he unleashes a formidable wave of telekinetic power. The door is violently blasted from its hinges, revealing a trembling figure cowering behind it, who lets out a pitiful shriek. It's none other than Eugene Lionheart. The man is an absolute wreck, gaunt, terrified, and practically radiating an aura of weakness. Eugene can barely conceal his utter disgust. So, the whispers were true after all. His own brother, the supposed heir to the Lionheart, had been boasting about his dalliances with creatures of the night. Robarian gestures dismissively toward the pathetic sight. He commands Iode to come out and properly greet his younger brother. Iode shuffles forward, trembling like a trapped animal, completely unable to meet Eugene's unwavering gaze. A cold, intimidating light seems to emanate from Eugene's eyes. He speaks, his voice utterly flat and devoid of warmth. It's a pleasure to see you, brother. I'm looking forward to our time together. An almost unbearably awkward silence descends upon the room, broken only by Iode stammering out a barely audible, yeah. Robarian, clearly having lost all patience, snapped. He orders him to go back upstairs and bury his nose in a book if he has nothing better to contribute. Iode meekly agrees and practically scurries away, casting one fearful glance back before disappearing behind the door. Once he's gone, Robarian turns back to Eugene, his arms crossed over his chest. With a heavy sigh, he apologizes for the disgraceful spectacle Eugene just had to witness. Eugene simply replies, "It's quite all right." Robarian then notes that Eugene had expressed a desire to study independently, rather than receiving direct instruction from him. Eugene politely clarifies that he didn't wish to be a burden, but then he reveals his true reasoning. If a Lionheart prodigy were to be taught directly by the master of the Red Tower, it would undoubtedly cause an uproar and spark accusations of favoritism. His eyes gleam with a quiet, unshakable determination. And that, he states plainly, is why I wish to pursue my magical studies on my own for the time being. A smile touches Robarian's lips, clearly impressed by the boy's remarkable foresight. He agrees, stating that he will hold no expectations for Eugene, but will likewise offer no interference whatsoever. He then gestures toward Hira, informing Eugene that if he requires anything at all, he need only ask her. Eugene expresses his gratitude for the thoughtful consideration. As a final gesture of goodwill, Robarian offers him a room right there in the tower. He admits it's not nearly as grand as the Lionheart estate, but assures him it's more than decent. A small, knowing smile touches Eugene's lips. He asks if he might visit the tower's library first, and just like that, an entire month flies by. Eugene immediately immerses himself in a relentless, punishing routine. He was found in the library every single day, without fail. To the other mages, he appeared to be nothing more than another diligent, hard-working student. He would arrive first thing in the morning to pore over volumes of magic theory, and be the last to leave late at night, constantly surrounded by towering stacks of books. But that was hardly the complete picture, as the tale of how one becomes strongest Manhwa hides its grueling process. Long before the library opened, he was up training his mana, and late at night, long after returning to the solitude of his room, he would train his physical body until he was completely drenched in sweat. He was operating on far less sleep than anyone else could possibly manage, but his body, meticulously honed by the white flame formula, could withstand the immense strain, recovering from even the most extreme fatigue in just a few short hours. After one grueling month, he finally looks up from a tome, a satisfied smile gracing his face. He had successfully devoured every single magic book the library had to offer. It was time to truly begin. He now grasped the very foundation of all modern magic, a system created 300 years ago by his former comrade, Sienna. What had begun as her own personal technique eventually became. This became the gold standard throughout the Magic Kingdom after she ascended to Master of the Green Magic Tower. The technique was simply known as the circle. It functioned by shaping mana inside the body into a perfect loop, which was then rotated to generate and cast magic. When a mage's strength surpasses the capacity of their existing circle, the circle itself undergoes a metamorphosis, allowing for the casting of far more potent spells. This is the very system used to rank mages from the first circle up to the fabled ninth. Even now, 3 centuries on, the circle system is the universal starting point for virtually every aspiring mage. With his theoretical foundation firmly established, Eugene proceeded to a training hall to finally bring his knowledge into the realm of practice. Hera was already there, poised to witness his very first incantation. Eugene sought her confirmation, asking if they were beginning with the standard circle method. Hera nodded, affirming that while other formulas did exist, the circle had proven itself to be the most stable and consistently effective method for the last 300 years. But Eugene, ever the iconoclast, had his own plans. He informed her he wanted to modify it slightly. Hera appeared doubtful, warning him that tampering with the original formula is a deeply unwise decision, but she prompted him to elaborate. A revolutionary inferno blazed within Eugene's gaze as he declared, "I intend to integrate the Lionheart style of mana management." Hera's expression instantly became grave. She grasped the sheer recklessness of his proposition and began to lecture him with the authority of a professor, clarifying that the mana manipulation employed by warriors and the type used for magic are fundamentally incompatible. Magic, she explained, demands precise formulas and incantations to take form. She stressed the catastrophic risk he was taking. Should he attempt to forcibly merge them, the mana could violently backlash and detonate, leaving him maimed or worse, gone for good. Eugene simply stood his ground, hands on his hips, a confident, almost hubristic smirk spreading across his lips. That's precisely why I must attempt it. He was fully aware of the dangers, but he had spent an entire month devouring every theory in the library for this very moment. He had to discover if it was truly possible. Hera sighed, recognizing the unshakable resolve in his eyes. She reasoned that his youthful bravado wouldn't be deterred by mere words. Very well, she relented. Go on and try, she added, as a brilliant magic circle materialized around her staff, which she now held at the ready. Her expression was now deadly serious. The very instant I detect the slightest hint of danger, I will intervene without hesitation. She reminded him that if he were injured, she wouldn't be the only one facing consequences. It would place the Tower Master in an exceedingly precarious situation. Eugene simply acknowledged her with a composed yes. He then closed his eyes, drawing a deep and steadying breath. I'm beginning. A familiar cerulean aura, the unmistakable energy of the white flame formula, began to coalesce around his hands. Hera could only stare, her eyes wide with a mixture of profound awe and primal fear. She knew she was about to witness an act that had never before been attempted in history. This was it. As Hera watched, staff poised for action, a torrent of untamed, blue, flaming mana erupted around Eugene. He was undertaking something 100 times more perilous than any botched summoning ritual. He shut his eyes, his concentration turning completely inward. He understood that superficially, the white flame formula and the circle system appeared to be polar opposites, but in truth, the way a hero in a becomes strongest Manhwa hides his power, he knew a deeper secret. They were two sides of the same coin. Both were simply different methodologies for controlling mana. The white flame formula utilized stars, condensed points of power within the heart that served as a core, whereas the circle system employed rings, which cycled that same energy to manifest spells. His theory was as simple as it was audacious. The concept was as simple as it was insane. If he could truly substitute the rings with his stars, he could fundamentally rewrite the very laws of magic. He wouldn't need to guess the outcome, he would feel it and adapt on the fly. All Hera could do was watch, clutching her staff, her own mind reeling to comprehend what she was witnessing. Incredible, she whispered, barely able to believe her eyes. He was flawlessly controlling an inherently unstable storm of mana. By all rights, it should have been tearing itself apart, yet it remained perfectly stable. How was that even possible for someone so young? Beads of sweat formed on Eugene's brow as he compelled the raw power in his palm to condense, meticulously shaping it into a small, flickering orb of light. In a heartbeat, that orb erupted into a raging fire, swirling with an astonishing amount of heat and raw power. But just as quickly, he willed the flames to subside, converting the spell mid-flight. The fireball seamlessly morphed into a stable, pulsing magic missile, and he did all of this without uttering a single word, without a single incantation. Hera was left utterly speechless. A fireball transformed into a magic missile, cast purely through calculation and converted mid-air without being dispelled. Such a feat was simply unheard of. He dismissed the missile with a casual flick of his finger, a smug look gracing his face. Not bad for a first attempt, clearly pleased with himself. He then turned to the still stunned Hera. Could you summon something for me to test this on? She stammered, struggling to compose herself. Yes, a golem. That should be fine, right? With a swift chant her staff and a summoning circle unfurled across the floor as a hulking stone figure started to rise from the ground. It was a golem constructed from Carabia, a type of magically reinforced stone. She explained that while it lacked defensive spells, its hide was so tough that most attacks couldn't even leave a scratch. Perfect. Eugene grinned, and as he pointed his finger, a new magic missile began to materialize. He fired. A brilliant beam of blue energy, vastly larger and more destructive than any ordinary magic missile, streaked across the room. The beam slammed into the golem's chest with a deafening crash, and when the smoke finally cleared, the golem was nothing but a pile of rubble. A massive, smoldering hole had been blown clean through where its torso once stood. And arriving just in time to witness the aftermath was the Tower Master, REBORN. He turned to Hara, his own mind reeling, and asked her to confirm what he believed he had just witnessed. Had Eugene truly created circles using the white flame formula and cast magic with them? Hara nodded, her voice thick with awe. She explained that the density and purity of his mana were unbelievable, the kind of raw power that becomes strongest Manhwa hides from view. The sheer force of that single attack, she said, surpassed what even a third circle mage could typically produce. Her words struck REBORN with immense weight. Such monstrous talent. To replace the fundamental system of magic with a warrior's technique, it wasn't merely impressive. It was utterly frightening. He knew Eugene had already reached 3 stars in the white flame formula. If his 3 stars were already equivalent to 3 circles of magic, then the true potential of this new method was simply staggering. Later, back in his office, REBORN asked Hara if Eugene had already departed for the day. She confirmed that he had business to attend to that morning. Hera, REBORN began, his expression deeply contemplative. He looked at her and posed a very pointed question. Would it be unfair of me to write Eugene a letter of recommendation for the Acreon? Hara gasped. The Royal Library, Acreon. She knew that place was forbidden to all but the most elite mages and nobles in the kingdom. But REBORN's mind is made up. I believe Eugene is the perfect candidate, he states with finality, already summoning a mystical quill to his grasp. With a flick of his wrist, he recalls the astounding feat he witnessed. After just a single month of studying elementary texts, Eugene managed to achieve the impossible. He conceived an entirely new method of spellcasting, a technique so potent that it utterly obliterated a magically fortified golem on its very first trial. I shall personally write the letter of recommendation, REBORN declares resolutely. A prodigy of that caliber deserves to be recognized and nurtured. Without question. Hera, however, expresses her apprehension, concerned that the other mages might perceive it as blatant favoritism. REBORN silences her with a single, sharp glare. He retorts that any mage who would dare complain is merely consumed by their own petty jealousy. He then shifts topics, inquiring what Eugene was doing out and about, pointing out that he shouldn't have any acquaintances in Aroth yet. Hera recalls his simple explanation to her. He claimed he was going to meet a friend. The archmage is visibly perplexed. A friend? He questions. Meanwhile, miles away, Eugene stands amidst the lively throng of Meldane's square, his gaze fixed upon a magnificent statue. It is a monument to Sienna, eternally frozen in a moment of youthful, brilliant triumph, exactly as he remembers her from a lifetime ago. He stares up at the sculpted face, a flicker of profound nostalgia in his eyes, and softly murmurs her name. He recalls how she flashed that exact same grin whenever she achieved something spectacular. Abruptly, an enormous figure plants itself directly in his path, completely eclipsing his view of the statue. A thunderous voice, seemingly wreathed in an aura of sparkling roses, bellows out. Eugene is taken completely by surprise. Gargus, he mutters. That's me. Gargus Lionheart. The giant confirms with a beaming, cheerful grin. Eugene can only stare, dumbfounded, wondering how an 18-year-old managed to cultivate a beard of that impressive thickness. Gargus remarks that Eugene has shot up a little, though it's nothing compared to his own colossal growth. Eugene simply retorts, "You're just absurdly massive." They lock hands in a firm clasp, a casual greeting between 2 distant cousins. But then, Gargus's expression shifts. His face turns serious as he tightens his grip on Eugene's hand. He can feel the hardened calluses, the wiry strength within. You've every day for these past 4 years. But it's not nearly enough, he proclaims, jabbing a finger as thick as a sausage towards Eugene's chest. From his pocket, he produces a small, shimmering vial. He proudly announces it's his family's secret muscle enhancement formula, brought all this way just for Eugene. Eugene, however, immediately rejects the offer. I don't need it, Gargus presses, but Eugene waves him away dismissively, telling him to stop sending his father those bizarre concoctions. Cutting straight to the chase, Eugene demands to know why he truly traveled all the way to Aroth. Surely it wasn't just to hand-deliver that little potion. Gargus's jovial expression vanishes, replaced by one of grave importance. Have you ever heard of a place called Bolero Street? At the name, Eugene's eyes narrow and his voice drops to a frigid tone. Oh, he's heard of it. It's the notorious den of vice where his brother Ide crawls to. Gargus leans in conspiratorially, his voice a low, thrilled whisper. I have it on good authority that a giant's most potent assets will be put up for auction. Eugene is so utterly flabbergasted he can barely process the words. A giant's. What now? The world around him seems to warp into a haze of pure absurdity. The family jewels of a giant. Gargus booms, practically vibrating with uncontained excitement. Eugene can only manage to ask, why in the 7 hells would you possibly want something like that? Gargus launches into a passionate explanation of their incredible alchemical properties. He intends to have a master alchemist brew them into the ultimate, custom-made muscle-boosting elixir. Come with me, Gargus pleads. I brought a pile of cash, but I'm worried it won't be enough to secure the prize. Eugene physically recoils in disgust. You want me to loan you money for that? In a story where a hero becomes strongest Manhwa hides his power, you're asking for this? Absolutely. A blazing fire of determination ignites in Gargus's eyes, and without a single moment of hesitation, the colossal 18-year-old suddenly dropped to his knees right in the middle of the bustling square. "I'll beg for it if I must," he declared. A wave of panic hit Eugene, who immediately tried to— "What are you doing? Get up. Your massive frame is already drawing every eye in the square." Gargis looked up, his own eyes glistening with unshed tears of gratitude. "Thank you. I swear on my life, I will repay you with interest." He quickly added that there would be other rare items up for grabs at the auction, not just the ones he wanted. With a heavy sigh of resignation, Eugene finally relented. "All right, fine." Gargis looked genuinely stunned that Eugene wasn't intrigued, but he assumes a man wielding a blade like Wine's is already fully equipped. Eugene simply rubs the back of his neck, averting his gaze. "My interests on Bolero Street lie elsewhere, far from the auction." His thoughts immediately snap back to his pitiful brother. He vividly recalls Ayod's hollow, twitching eyes, the undeniable mark of a fiend's charm, and the agony of its subsequent withdrawal. Eugene's determination solidifies, his gaze hardening with a chilling light. "That imbecile will undoubtedly surface on Bolero Street. I only need to bide my time until the next full moon." After completely upending the world of magic, Eugene receives a summons from the one individual capable of unlocking doors he never dreamed of approaching. This encounter could very well be his ultimate opportunity to find the answers that have long eluded him. He strides through the majestic corridors of the Red Magic Tower. The very instant he returned, he was summoned straight to the office of the Tower Master himself, Roberian. A subtle smirk graces his features. The timing couldn't be more perfect. He has a few pointed questions for Roberian concerning his disgraceful sibling. Eugene steps into the Tower Master's office, a magnificent chamber overflowing with tomes and arcane relics. Roberian is already there, awaiting his arrival, standing beside his desk with a composed and welcoming demeanor. With a gracious smile, Roberian acknowledges him and motions toward a chair, beckoning him to have a seat. They both settle at a grand, polished table, the air in the room formal yet charged with a palpable sense of anticipation. Eugene gets directly to the matter, meeting the Tower Master's gaze head-on. "For what reason have you summoned me?" Rather than providing a direct answer, Roberian just smiles, and with a flick of his finger, a single, elegantly sealed letter levitates from a pile of documents on his desk. "Peruse this first," he suggests, as the letter glides over to Eugene, shimmering with a gentle magical luminescence before settling softly into his hands. Eugene's eyes widen in disbelief. For a fleeting moment, his unflappable composure completely fractures. He can hardly process what he is now holding, a letter of recommendation to the esteemed Acreon. Acreon is not merely a library. It is the Royal Library, the absolute epicenter of magic in the entire world. Even 300 years in the past, it was a fabled sanctuary holding secrets that no single magic tower could ever aspire to contain. A jolt of astonishment runs through him as he mentally urges himself to remain humble. This is an extraordinary honor, yet he can't help but feel it's far too great for him at this stage. But Roberian simply beams, radiating absolute confidence in his decision. He asserts that this is the ideal moment for Eugene to make the journey, explaining that because Eugene has yet to dedicate himself to a singular school of magic, his mind is akin to fertile soil. Even if he fails to comprehend everything within Acreon's wall, the sheer exposure at this juncture will broaden his perspective in truly astonishing ways. Roberian's eyes sparkle with profound excitement. He declares that one day, all that knowledge will forge the very foundation that elevates Eugene's magic. After all, the tale of how a hero becomes strongest Manhwa hides in the pages of forgotten lore, transforming it into something truly legendary. He adds that Acreon houses ancient scriptures from the age of myth, including the fabled philosopher's text. Eugene listens intently, his thoughts racing as a sudden, hopeful idea dawns on him. He looks looking, almost hesitant to ask. "In that case, are Madame Sienna's original writings also stored there?" Naturally, Roberian confirms this with a simple nod. He clarifies that while the various magic towers possess copies of Sienna's work, Acreon is the sole guardian of the originals. It's a 3-volume masterpiece she penned in her final years, titled Witchcraft, a series that holds the very core of her power. Her magic, the most priceless grimoires in the entire history of Aroth. The very truth of how one becomes strongest Manhwa hides within them, so no copies exist. Roberian leans back, elaborating further that only the initial volume has ever been released to the public. However, he reassures Eugene that even that lone tome contains enough. He leans forward once more, his voice laced with awe. "The first time I laid eyes on Witchcraft," he confesses, "everything I had ever learned felt like nothing more than a child's game." Roberian then clarifies that he has yet to send the recommendation, as he wished to hear Eugene's personal thoughts on the matter first. With a look of genuine sincerity, he inquires, "Would it be acceptable for me to draft this on your behalf?" Internally, Eugene is screaming, "Of course it is, why are you even asking?" But outwardly, he maintains his composure. He calmly tells Roberian that he's perfectly fine with it. However, he feigns concern that it might create complications for the Tower Master. Roberian just lets out a booming laugh, waving away the notion. "Don't you give that a second thought," he reassures him. "This is a trivial matter for me to handle." Eugene carefully weighs his options. The Tower Master is clearly in high spirits and prepared to grant him a significant favor. A man of his stature wouldn't dare retract such an offer over a few difficult questions. This was his opening. He looks up, his expression hardens. "So, Roberian," he states, his voice firm and unwavering, "there is something I must ask you regarding my brother, Iode." Eugene doesn't hold back, laying all his cards on the table. He reveals that since his arrival, he's been plagued by rumors that his brother isn't studying magic at all, but rather squandering his time with nightcrawlers in the city's shadowy depths. The warm smile instantly evaporates from Roberian's face. He appears completely taken aback, letting out a faint sound as his composure shatters. Eugene's eyes narrow with suspicion. That single reaction was all the confirmation he needed. He knows. Roberian begins to stammer, clearly struggling for words. Not certain how to explain this. He finally exhales in defeat. It is true, he concedes, his face a mask of shame. He confesses that he's warned Ayad on several occasions, but his words fell on deaf ears. Roberian then explains how the times have changed. In the old, those creatures were lethal, draining the very life force from their prey, but that was before the demon world's gates were opened. Now, while they still feed on a person's spirit, they no longer take lives. The new Queen of the Night strictly forbids such actions. Eugene's expression remains glacial. That hardly excuses my brother's behavior, he states with chilling finality. Roberian can only bow his head in shame. Yes, you are correct. Then Roberian looks up at Eugene, his eyes filled with a pleading light. Please, try to show a little. Eugene stares back, incredulous. I beg your pardon? Roberian then begins to recount the entire tragic tale. I had departed the main estate 4 years prior, filled with high hopes, but his innate talent could never measure up to the crushing weight of the Lionheart name. He encountered failure after agonizing failure. The mages of this very tower, myself included, all attempted to guide him, but nothing took root. The pressure on Sir Ayad, given his lineage, is simply immense. Roberian continues, his voice heavy with sympathy, and it has only compounded over time. He admits that he thought allowing Ayad to find some form of release might be for the best. He warned him against overindulgence, fearing that without some kind of outlet, Ayad might have shattered completely. Eugene absorbed the words in silence. He had to concede the point. After all, he had resided in the main family's estate for 4 years. He knew from personal experience just how suffocating that pressure could be, and his thoughts drifted to his own family. He thought of his parents, his prodigiously talented siblings, Cyan and Cyan, and of course, Seal. Ayad was perpetually caught in their shadows, always feeling inadequate. He pieced it together. Ayad likely stayed here, enduring the scorn, because it was still preferable to the stifling judgment that awaited him back home. Under the table, his fists clenched. He could find it in himself to pity his brother's predicament. He could even sympathize, but cavorting with succubi was still an unforgivable transgression, a line that should never have been crossed. As far as he was concerned, a change in their behavior didn't alter their fundamental nature. Demons were demons. The notion of true coexistence was a dangerous fantasy. His expression hardened with grim resolve. He had to witness for himself exactly what his brother was entangled in. The scene then transitions, shifting to the night of the full moon. The narrow, congested passage of Bolero Alley was swarming with shadowy figures, among them Garcus and Eugene. They moved through the throng, their faces concealed by deep hoods, having used transformation magic to disguise their true appearances. Eugene was now a brunette to avoid any chance of recognition, while Garcus, clearly irritated with his own altered form, grumbled. But why must we go through all this trouble? Eugene spun around, his voice a sharp hiss. We are children of the main family. If we're identified in a forbidden alleyway, can you even fathom the kind of rumors that would ignite? Garcus blinked as the simple logic finally registered. Oh, you're right, he conceded, nodding as they pressed onward. Eugene then produced a small, circular communication device. It emitted a soft tone as he activated the call. Are you in position, he asked, and a voice promptly replied from the other. How did you know? The perspective shifts to the informant, a man perched on a balcony, surveying the street below. He explained that the device was only operational within the alley's confines. He assured Eugene he'd send a signal the instant he made the sighting. Eugene then asked the most vital, Are you certain you can find him? The informant let out a smug chuckle. Sir Ayad doesn't bother with transformation magic. He apparently always wears the same robe. Locating him should be simple. Eugene's jaw tightened in a flash of fury. Does he actually enjoy the notoriety he gets from flaunting his identity so recklessly? He muttered under his breath, If he were my son, I'd beat this foolish habit out of him. Garcus glanced over at him. Didn't you say you had other business here as well? I'll attend to it myself, Eugene replied dismissively, his eyes already meticulously scanning the crowd. The communication device clutched tightly in his hand. With everything set, Eugene said, pulling his hood down further. Let's proceed to the auction, he stated, his voice low and firm with determination as they melted deeper into the notorious alley. In the shadowy recesses of Aroth, a clandestine auction is about to commence. For most, it's a marketplace for forbidden power, a place where the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides their true ambitions. For Eugene, however, it was simply a waiting room. A man wearing an ornate mask stepped onto the stage, welcoming his concealed guests to the beautiful full moon night. The auctioneer began to elaborate on their specialty, precious magical materials, particularly those of the rare and exotic kind, sourced directly from the demon world itself. As proof of their wares, an attendant brought forth the first item, the massive curved horn of a Balurx. The bidding erupted at a staggering 10 million cells, setting off a stream of a parade of rare ingredients followed, each one a prize that would command a king's ransom anywhere else on the globe. From their exclusive viewing chamber, Eugene observed the proceedings with an expression of pure boredom. As a live, pulsating spider was presented, Garcus leaned, his voice a low, urgent whisper, demanding to know if he was certain the giant's prize jewel was truly on the block tonight. Gargus's face was a mask of grim seriousness, his brow furrowed with an intensity typically reserved for the battlefield. Yes, he affirmed with unwavering certainty. The whispers I heard confirmed it's on the list. Abruptly, Eugene lunged forward, his hand crashing down on one of the luminous bidding buttons. Gargus flinched, utterly startled by the sudden movement. Eugene! On the stage, the auctioneer faltered, taken aback by the instantaneous, decisive bid for an item he had scarcely begun to introduce. Eugene's eyes were wide, his gaze locked with laser focus on the object now on display. The opening bid was a mere 1 million sell. He could hardly believe his luck. To discover this here, of all places, it appeared to be just a small, unassuming piece of dull-colored metal. But Eugene knew its true nature. A fragment of a blade that was destruction incarnate, a legendary weapon whose existence history itself had dared not record. This is the very essence of power, the truth of how one becomes strongest. Manhwa hides its nature until the time is right. He recognizes it in an instant. It was a shard of the Moonlight Sword. After effortlessly winning the bid, he held the cool metal fragment in his palm, hoping to feel some lingering trace of its immense, terrifying power, but there was nothing. It no longer radiated that ominous, soul-chilling energy he recalled so vividly from 300 years in the past. Now, the fragment was merely silent, utterly inert. Just as he was drifting in his communication device vibrated. The voice on the other end was sharp and direct. Sir Eugene, Sir Ide has arrived. That was his cue. I'm leaving, Eugene announced, pulling his hood back over his head. Gargus glanced over, his expression puzzled. What? You're not staying for the rest of the auction? No, Eugene replied flatly, tossing a credit slate to Gargus. Here. If they bring out the giant's heirloom,